But let's turn to Gerald for a moment, maybe to pick up on what the doctor has already laid on the table. For true investment partnerships and co-investments to occur between Africa and the U.S., there needs to be investable transactions. And I wondered, from the experience of your own institution, can you give us some examples of where that's happening and what kind of investments are there?
All right. All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. My name is Gerald Kasaato. I work with NSSF Uganda. Just to put it in context, NSSF Uganda was set up by an act of parliament in 1985. We are essentially a provident fund. Our assets under management currently stand at $2 billion. But what is important to note is that that figure has actually more than doubled in the last 3 or 4 years. We used to be much, much smaller. Until 2014, most of the assets were invested in Uganda, and we began an effort to try and diversify the portfolio. Currently, the current regulations allow us to invest in the East African region, and currently, about 30% of the assets are invested actually in the East African region. The easiest thing to do at the time was to try and get more exposure to public equities, especially on the Kenyan market. We've also taken advantage of the Tanzanian market. Now that we are getting to the levels that we are almost comfortable with on the public equity space, we are trying to diversify into other alternative asset classes, which then brings me to the answer that you're seeking from your question. What I see is essentially 3 areas in which African pension funds can partner with US funds in terms of co-investment opportunities. In our case, for instance, there are projects that we initiate as NSSF Uganda, which are part of our investment strategy. We have quite a lot that is happening in the real estate sector, that is, or the real estate asset class, especially in the areas of affordable housing, or even mixed-use developments. I can give an example of a $600 million project, which we are about to start. We have a prime land of about 565 acres. The project is phased into 10 phases. Phase 1 is actually expected to begin this year, costing about $60 million. We've actually also interested the United Nations to come and approach us for that particular piece of land where they want us to do their common premises. We believe that once we have the UN as the anchor to that prime piece of land, it actually even makes the other bigger project more exciting. And for that, we are happy to extend co-investment opportunities to a couple of international investors, including US investors. That is one area. Now, we have another area, for instance, where, like I said, was set up an act of parliament, which essentially means that we're a quasi-government body. But from time to time, government comes to us seeking for solutions, especially in the infrastructure space. The current infrastructure deficit in Uganda currently stands at almost $10 billion. And yet, for the country to grow to the next level, we need to invest in those areas. For the last 10 years, for the 10 years from 1993 to 2013, Uganda was enjoying an average growth of GDP growth of about 7%. We've seen it come down to levels of 4–5%, and it is likely to stay at those levels until something is done in the infrastructure space. We have a very exciting project, for instance, in the energy space, where we want to refinance an existing power dam, right? Just to give a bit of detail, Uganda currently, the consumption of electricity currently stands at about 16% of the entire population. Installed capacity is just under 800 megawatts. But one of the key big projects was actually a 250 megawatt project, which was financed by a couple of investors. But the big challenge with that project is that you find that most of the financing was short-term, and yet this is a long-term asset. It is estimated that by the end of June this year, the total loans outstanding for that project will stand at about $478 million. You're looking at an average duration of about 7 years for a project which is 30 years or more. And you're looking at an average interest rate of about 6.5%. Actually, with some of the loans being in the region of 11, 10%. So there's a big demand, there's a big expectation from government that we can actually provide a solution in terms of refinancing that project. And we are actually open to it because currently it's a brownfield investment. Mm-hmm. But also, it also has multiplier effects in terms of bringing the cost of energy down, because currently, from that particular dam alone, you're looking at a cost per kilowatt hour of 13 cents for generated hydroelectricity from that project. Yet the average for hydro tends to be 4 cents or even lower in some countries. Now, that is one way in which we can partner with government. But given the amount of money involved, obviously we'll have to partner with a couple of other external investors. What we bring on the table is a local anchor investor. Yeah? The other third category has been in the area where the other partner, a partner, in that case a co-investor, brings to us a deal for us to participate as a local anchor investor. I can give an example. We just recently, this year, invested in a private equity fund which focuses on agriculture. It's a single country, single sector fund. The motivation for us to invest in that particular private equity fund was because when you look at agriculture, it's a sector that employs almost 80% of the population. So we believe that that one has big multiplier effects for the economy. But also the EU was very passionate about changing the model from donation to partnering with the private sector. So together, ourselves together with the EU came on board as the first anchor investors in that fund. It is expected to be 25 million euros. Mm-hmm. The first close was completed in November last year with 12 million euros. Second close is expected to be completed at the end of this year. So, to sum up your question, yes, there are some projects that we originate. There are some that we provide, we do as a way of providing solutions to government, because we also have a social responsibility. But in whatever we do, we try and ensure that those projects are bankable. But in the third category, the other partner can actually come to us with a bankable project, and then we can act as an anchor. Yep.
Thank you very much, Gerald, for those very concrete examples. Really appreciate that.
Doing business in Africa, you can't afford to be without Africa Investor.